The rain fell steadily on Forest Lawn Memorial Park as Dr. Sarah Chin pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. It was nearly midnight on March 15th, 2024, and the cemetery lay shrouded in an eerie silence that seemed to whisper secrets from the past. Sarah had spent 15 years as a forensic archaeologist, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to uncover. It all started 3 weeks earlier when construction workers discovered unusual documents buried beneath the old administration building. The papers, sealed in a waterproof container, bore the official seal of Jackson's estate and contained detailed burial instructions that defied all conventional funeral practices. The document spoke of preservation beyond time and awakening protocols, phrases that made no sense for a standard burial. Sarah's team had been called in to investigate what appeared to be irregularities in several celebrity graves, but the Jackson documents stood out like a beacon in the darkness. The instructions described a metallic sarcophagus designed with advanced preservation technology, far beyond anything available in 2009. Most disturbing were the references to temporal suspension and revival chambers, terms that belonged in science fiction, not funeral arrangements. The team gathered under the pale moonlight consisted of Sarah, her colleague Dr. Marcus Webb, cemetery historian Elena Rodriguez, and 2 sworn-to-secrecy technicians. They had obtained special permits under the guise of structural integrity testing, but everyone knew they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. As they approached Michael Jackson's grave, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. The headstone stood pristine and undisturbed, surrounded by wilted flowers left by devoted fans. The ground-penetrating radar had revealed something extraordinary beneath the surface, a massive metallic structure that extended far deeper than any normal burial chamber. "Are we sure about this?" Elena whispered, her voice trembling in the cold night air. She had worked at Forest Lawn for 20 years and had never seen anything like the readings they were getting. The metallic object below measured nearly 8 feet in length and was positioned within what appeared to be a sealed chamber. Dr. Webb, ever the scientist, remained focused on the technical aspects. The electromagnetic readings suggest advanced materials, possibly titanium alloy with electronic components. "This isn't just a coffin, it's some kind of preservation system." His words hung heavy in the air, each syllable adding weight to their growing realization that they were dealing with something unprecedented. The excavation began with careful precision. Each shovelful of earth revealed more questions than answers. The soil composition showed signs of chemical treatment, compounds designed to prevent moisture and bacterial growth. It was as if the entire burial site had been transformed into a sterile environment. 3 hours into the dig, they encountered the first metallic surface. The sarcophagus gleamed under their flashlights, its surface unmarked by 15 years underground. Intricate engravings covered the sides, featuring symbols that none of them recognized. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, far beyond anything they had seen in modern funeral preparation. Sarah ran her fingers along the sealed edges, feeling subtle vibrations that suggested internal mechanisms were still active. "This thing has power," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. The implications were staggering. How could electronic systems function after 15 years underground? What kind of technology were they dealing with? The sarcophagus bore an inscription in elegant script. "When the world is ready, the truth shall emerge. Until then, let time stand still." The word sent chills down Sarah's spine. This wasn't just a burial, it was a message, a challenge, a promise of revelations to come. As they prepared to open the chamber, Elena discovered a secondary compartment hidden beneath the main sarcophagus. Inside lay documents sealed in crystal containers, their contents clearly visible through the transparent walls. The papers detailed what appeared to be a comprehensive preservation protocol, complete with revival procedures and monitoring systems. "Look at this," Marcus called out, his voice thick with amazement. He had found connection points along the sarcophagus walls, sophisticated interfaces that suggested the entire system could be controlled externally. The technology was decades ahead of anything available in 2009, raising impossible questions about its origin. The team stood in stunned silence as the full scope of their discovery became clear. This wasn't just Michael Jackson's final resting place. It was a technological marvel that challenged everything they understood about death, preservation, and the limits of human knowledge. The documents they had found were merely the tip of an iceberg that extended into realms of possibility they had never imagined. Sarah looked around at her team, seeing her own mix of excitement and terror reflected in their faces. They had stumbled upon something that could rewrite the rules of life and death, but with that knowledge came an enormous burden. Whatever lay inside the sarcophagus would change their lives forever. The night was far from over, and the most shocking discoveries were yet to come. As they prepared the specialized equipment needed to safely open the chamber, each team member silently grappled with the same question. Was the world truly ready for what Michael Jackson had left behind? The answer would come soon enough, and it would shake the foundations of everything they believed about mortality, celebrity, and the mysterious intersection between life and legend. The specialized cutting tools hummed to life as Sarah's team began the delicate process of opening the sarcophagus. The metallic surface proved more challenging than expected. Their diamond-tipped saws barely scratched the surface. Dr. Webb suggested using ultrasonic cutters, technology typically reserved for aerospace applications, but even those struggled against the unknown alloy. "This material isn't in any database I know," Webb muttered, adjusting the frequency of the cutting device. Sparks flew as the tool finally began to penetrate the seal, revealing that the sarcophagus wasn't just one solid piece, but consisted of multiple interlocking layers, each serving a specific preservation function. Elena monitored the environmental readings as they worked. Temperature inside is holding steady at exactly 68 degrees Fahrenheit, she reported. After 15 years underground, that's impossible without active climate control. The implications were staggering. This meant the preservation system had been functioning continuously since 2009. As the first layer of sealing was breached, a soft hiss escaped from the chamber. The sound was followed by a sweet, almost musical tone that seemed to emanate from within the sarcophagus itself. Sarah had expected the musty smell of death and decay, but instead, the air that emerged carried a faint fragrance of roses and something else, something clinical and sterile. The second technician, James, had been quietly documenting everything with specialized cameras. The internal atmosphere shows elevated oxygen levels and trace amounts of xenon gas, he announced. Xenon is used in high-end preservation techniques, but I've never seen it in funeral applications. This is laboratory-grade life support technology. Working with painstaking care, the team removed layer after layer of protective sealing. Each barrier revealed more sophisticated technology, fiber optic sensors, microprocessors, and what appeared to be biological monitoring equipment. The sarcophagus wasn't just preserving a body, it was actively maintaining it. Sarah's hands trembled as they approached the final seal. Through a small transparent panel, they caught their first glimpse of what lay inside. The sight took her breath away and challenged everything she understood about death and preservation. Michael Jackson lay inside, but not as they had expected to find him. His skin held a natural color and elasticity that seemed impossible after 15 years. His famous curls appeared recently styled, and his clothes, the iconic military-style jacket and single-sequin glove, looked as if they had been tailored yesterday. Most remarkably, his chest appeared to be moving in a slow, rhythmic pattern that mimicked breathing. "This can't be real," Elena whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "People don't look like this after 15 years. They just don't." She had seen hundreds of exhumed bodies in her career, and none had ever appeared so perfectly preserved. Dr. Webb immediately began taking readings with his portable scanner. "I'm detecting cellular activity," he announced, his scientific training warring with the impossibility of his findings. Not just preservation, active cellular regeneration. The biological markers suggest suspended animation rather than death. The revelation hit the team like a physical blow. They weren't looking at a preserved corpse. They were looking at someone in a state of suspended life, maintained by technology that shouldn't exist. The documents they had found earlier suddenly made terrible sense. This hadn't been a burial at all. Sarah noticed additional elements within the chamber. Beside the figure lay several items. A sealed envelope marked, "To be opened when awakened," a golden disc covered in intricate symbols, and what appeared to be a small tablet computer of unknown design. These weren't burial artifacts, they were instructions, waiting for someone to discover them. The golden disc captured everyone's attention. Its surface was covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Elena, who had studied ancient languages and symbols for decades, had never seen anything like it. The symbols appear to be three-dimensional, she observed, leaning closer with a magnifying glass. They're not just etched into the surface. They seem to extend into the material itself. It's like looking at writing that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Marcus made another shocking discovery. The monitoring systems show this chamber is connected to an external network, he announced. There are data cables running deep underground, far beyond the cemetery boundaries. This entire setup is being monitored remotely. The implications were staggering. Someone, or some organization, had been watching over this chamber for 15 years. The preservation wasn't just passive technology. It was an active system being maintained and monitored by unknown parties. The team realized they weren't just archaeologists stumbling upon a mystery. They were trespassers in someone else's carefully orchestrated plan. As they documented their findings, Sarah noticed that some of the monitoring equipment had begun flashing different patterns. Red lights that had been steady were now blinking rapidly, and several displays showed readings they couldn't interpret. It was as if the system knew it had been discovered and was responding accordingly. We need to consider the possibility that we've triggered some kind of alert system, Sarah warned her team. If this chamber is being monitored, our presence here might not remain secret for long. The envelope marked for awakening seemed to pulse with significance. Sarah reached for it with trembling fingers, knowing that whatever it contained would either provide answers or raise even more terrifying questions. The paper felt warm to the touch, and she could swear she felt a slight electrical sensation as her fingers made contact. Before opening it, she looked around at her team. Each face reflected the same mixture of awe, terror, and scientific curiosity that she felt. They had crossed a threshold from which there could be no return. Whatever secrets lay hidden in that envelope would change their understanding of life, death, and the nature of existence itself. The night was growing darker, but their journey into the impossible was just beginning. Sarah's hand shook as she carefully opened the envelope marked to be opened when awakened. The paper inside was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It seemed to glow with an inner light and felt warm to the touch. As she unfolded it, elegant handwriting appeared before their eyes, the ink seeming to flow across the page as they watched. My dear discoverers, the letter began. If you are reading this, then the time has finally come for the truth to be revealed. What you see before you is not death, but a pause between worlds. I am Michael Jackson, and I am waiting. The team stood frozen as Sarah continued reading aloud. The letter explained that in 2008, a year before his supposed death, Michael had been approached by scientists from a secretive organization called the Temple Research Institute. They had developed technology that could suspend biological functions indefinitely, essentially stopping time for the human body while maintaining full consciousness preservation. The world was not ready for this knowledge, the letter continued. But I knew that someday, when humanity had evolved enough to understand, the right people would find me. You are those people. The preservation chamber you see before you is not just maintaining my physical form, it is preparing for my return. Dr. Webb's face had gone pale. This is impossible, he muttered. The technology described here wouldn't exist for decades, maybe centuries. How could they have developed this in 2008? Elena discovered additional documentation in the chamber. Technical manuals written in multiple languages, including some symbols that didn't appear to be from Earth. The manuals detailed the preservation process and, most remarkably, the revival procedure. According to the documents, awakening was possible through a specific sequence of electromagnetic pulses combined with harmonic frequencies. Look at this, Marcus called out, pointing to a series of monitors that had suddenly activated. The system is responding to our presence. It's running some kind of diagnostic sequence. The screen showed complex biological readings, brain activity patterns, cellular regeneration rates, and what appeared to be consciousness indicators. As if responding to their discovery, The chamber began to emit a low humming sound that seemed to resonate through their very bones. The golden disc started rotating slowly, its mysterious symbols casting shifting patterns of light across the chamber walls. Sarah realized they weren't just observers anymore. They had become participants in something beyond their understanding. The letter contained specific instructions for the awakening process, but it also carried a warning. The knowledge I possess will change your world forever. I have seen glimpses of the future during my suspension, experienced visions of what humanity might become. But with great revelation comes great responsibility. Are you prepared for what comes next? Elena noticed that some of the symbols on the golden disc matched hieroglyphs she had studied, but they were arranged in patterns that suggested advanced mathematical concepts. These aren't just decorative, she realized. They're calculations, formulas for manipulating time and biological processes. This disc isn't just a record, it's a key. The chamber's environmental systems suddenly shifted into a higher state of activity. Lights that had been dim began brightening, and mechanical sounds suggested that long-dormant systems were coming online. The figure inside the sarcophagus appeared to stir slightly, as if responding to some internal signal. "We're seeing increased brain activity," Marcus reported, monitoring the biological readings. "It's as if the consciousness is becoming aware of external stimuli. The awakening process might be beginning automatically." Sarah faced an impossible decision. They had stumbled upon what appeared to be one of the most significant discoveries in human history, but they were completely unprepared for the consequences. The letter made it clear that awakening Michael Jackson would unleash knowledge that could fundamentally alter human civilization. The chamber's computer systems began displaying messages in multiple languages. Awakening sequence initiated. External presence detected. Temporal suspension concluding. Prepare for consciousness transfer. The words scrolled past faster than they could read them, but their meaning was clear. They had triggered something they couldn't stop. Elena discovered a final section of the letter that made her blood run cold. "The organization that helped me achieve this state exists beyond normal human understanding," it read. "They are watching, always watching. My awakening will signal them that humanity is ready for the next phase of evolution. But be warned, not all change is welcome, and not all evolution is beneficial." Dr. Webb made a disturbing observation about the monitoring equipment. "The biological readings aren't just showing life signs," he announced. "They're showing enhanced life signs. Brain activity that's far beyond normal human parameters, cellular regeneration rates that defy known science, and electromagnetic patterns that suggest abilities we don't understand." As the chamber systems continued their activation sequence, the team realized they faced a choice that would affect not just their own lives, but potentially all of humanity. The figure in the sarcophagus was stirring more noticeably now, and the golden disc had begun emitting tones that seemed to carry messages beyond human hearing. Sarah looked at the final paragraph of the letter. "If you choose to awaken me, know that you are choosing to open a door between worlds. I carry within me the memories of my suspension, visions of possible futures, and knowledge given to me by beings who exist beyond your current understanding. The music you knew was just the beginning. What comes next will be a symphony that reshapes reality itself." The humming in the chamber grew louder, and the lights began pulsing in rhythm with what appeared to be a heartbeat. Outside, storm clouds were gathering, and Elena could swear she heard distant music carrying on the wind, melodies that sounded hauntingly familiar yet impossibly beautiful. The awakening had begun, whether they were ready or not. The only question remaining was whether humanity was prepared for the return of the King of Pop and the cosmic knowledge he carried within his suspended consciousness. The chamber erupted in a symphony of light and sound as the awakening sequence reached its crescendo. The figure that had lain motionless for 15 years began to show unmistakable signs of returning consciousness. His fingers twitched first, then his eyes moved beneath closed lids, and finally, his chest began to rise and fall with deeper, more natural breathing patterns. Sarah and her team watched in stunned silence as Michael Jackson's eyes slowly opened. They weren't the eyes of someone waking from sleep. They glowed with an inner light that seemed to contain depths of knowledge and experience far beyond normal human comprehension. When he looked at them, it felt as though he was seeing not just their physical forms, but their very souls. "You found me," he whispered, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the chamber itself. "After all these years of waiting, dreaming, learning, you finally found me." As he spoke, the golden disc began spinning faster, its symbols now casting complex patterns that seemed to dance in the air around them. Dr. Webb's instruments went haywire as Michael slowly sat up. The biological readings spiked beyond their measurement capabilities, showing cellular activity that defied all known science. "His body temperature is perfect," Webb announced in amazement. "No muscle atrophy, no signs of tissue deterioration. It's as if he was placed in suspension yesterday." But it was Michael's mental state that proved most remarkable. As he emerged fully from the sarcophagus, he began speaking of things that shouldn't have been possible. "During my suspension, I experienced time differently," he explained. "I could see forward and backward, witness possible futures, understand the connections between all things. The beings who gifted me this technology, they showed me wonders beyond imagination." Elena noticed that the strange symbols throughout the chamber were now glowing brightly, and she could swear she was beginning to understand their meaning. "The language," she gasped. "It's becoming clear to me. These aren't just symbols, they're instructions for manipulating the fundamental forces of reality." Michael stood with fluid grace, his movements carrying an otherworldly elegance that seemed to defy gravity itself. His clothes appeared freshly tailored, his skin radiant with health, and his famous curls fell perfectly into place, as if styled by invisible hands. But most striking were his eyes. They held knowledge that seemed ancient beyond measure. "The music you knew was just the beginning," he said, his voice carrying undertones that seemed to harmonize with itself. "During my suspension, I composed symphonies that exist beyond sound, created rhythms that pulse with the heartbeat of the universe. The beings who helped me understand that reality itself is a song, and we are all instruments in a cosmic orchestra." As he spoke, impossible things began happening around them. The air itself seemed to shimmer with musical notes made visible, and the team could hear melodies that spoke directly to their souls. Flowers that Elena was certain hadn't been there before began blooming around the chamber, their colors more vivid than anything in nature. Marcus detected energy readings that challenged everything he understood about physics. "The electromagnetic field around him is unlike anything I've ever recorded," he reported. "It's as if he's generating energy patterns that shouldn't be possible with current technology or with human biology." Michael approached Sarah with a gentle smile that carried both warmth and profound sadness. "I chose suspension not to escape death, but to bridge worlds," he explained. "The beings who made this possible exist in dimensions beyond your current perception. They've been watching humanity, waiting for the right moment to share their knowledge." The golden disc rose from its resting place and began floating around Michael, its rotation creating patterns of light that seemed to write messages in the air. "This contains the history of countless civilizations," he said, gesturing to the disc. "Worlds that learned to transcend physical limitations, to make music with the very fabric of existence." Elena found herself understanding concepts that should have been incomprehensible. "The symbols are teaching us," she realized. "They're not just writing, they're direct transfers of knowledge, downloading information directly into our consciousness." As Michael moved through the chamber, plants and flowers continued to bloom in his wake, and the team began experiencing visions of impossible beauty. They saw worlds where music had literal creative power, civilizations that danced among the stars, and technologies that turned imagination into reality. But with the wonder came warnings. "The knowledge comes with great responsibility," Michael cautioned. "Not everyone will welcome these revelations. There are forces that profit from limitation, from keeping humanity trapped in narrow perceptions of what's possible." Dr. Webb made a disturbing discovery. "We're not alone," he announced, checking his communication devices. "I'm detecting multiple vehicles approaching the cemetery, and they're using military-grade equipment. Someone knows we're here." Through the chamber walls, they could hear the distant sound of helicopters and vehicles converging on their location. Michael's expression grew serious. "They've been waiting for this moment too," he said. "Organizations that would use this knowledge for control rather than liberation. We have very little time." The golden disk began emitting tones that seemed to carry urgent messages, and Michael nodded as if understanding a language beyond human comprehension. "The awakening has begun a cascade of events that cannot be stopped," he announced. "But it can be guided. You must choose. Will you help me share this knowledge with those who would use it wisely? Or will you let it fall into hands that would weaponize wonder itself?" Outside, the sound of approaching forces grew louder, and Elena realized they stood at a crossroads that would determine not just their own fates, but the destiny of human consciousness itself. The chamber that had preserved Michael Jackson for 15 years was about to become ground zero for a transformation that would reshape the very nature of reality. The king of pop had returned, but he brought with him knowledge that would either elevate humanity to unimaginable heights or plunge it into a conflict between those who embraced infinite possibility and those who preferred the safety of limitation. The sound of military vehicles grew closer as Michael Jackson stood in the center of the chamber, the golden disk spinning faster around him. The symbols on the walls pulsed with increasing intensity, and Sarah realized they were experiencing the opening notes of something far grander than they had ever imagined. "The forces approaching seek to contain what cannot be contained," Michael said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through multiple dimensions. "But the awakening has already begun. Across the world, sensitive individuals are starting to hear the cosmic symphony. The frequency of human consciousness itself is shifting." Dr. Webb's instruments detected massive energy fluctuations emanating not just from Michael, but from locations around the globe. "I'm reading similar signatures from sites on every continent," he reported in amazement. "Whatever's happening here, it's triggering responses worldwide." Elena watched in wonder as the chamber walls became transparent, revealing a view not of the cemetery above, but of space itself. Stars danced in patterns that spelled out messages in languages she was only beginning to understand. "We're not just underground anymore," she whispered. "This chamber exists in multiple realities simultaneously." Michael moved to the center of the space, and as he did, his appearance began to change. His clothes transformed into garments that seemed woven from light itself, and his skin took on a luminescence that made him appear as much energy as matter. The sequin glove on his hand now sparkled with actual starlight. "During my suspension, I learned that death is merely a transition between states of existence," he explained. "The beings who help me achieve this form exist beyond physical limitations. They are pure consciousness, and they've been guiding the evolution of aware species throughout the universe." The golden disk expanded, becoming a portal through which they could see other worlds, civilizations where music had literal creative power, where art could reshape reality, and where the boundaries between imagination and manifestation had been completely dissolved. "This is what humanity is becoming," Michael announced. "The age of limitation is ending." Marcus made a startling discovery as he monitored global communications. "Social media is exploding with reports of impossible phenomena," he announced. "People worldwide are claiming to hear music that seems to come from inside their heads, seeing colors that don't exist, and experiencing moments of telepathic connection with others." The military forces had reached the cemetery perimeter, but as they approached Michael's grave site, their equipment began malfunctioning. Vehicle engines died, communications equipment failed, and their weapons became inoperative. It was as if a field of peaceful energy was neutralizing all aggressive technology. Michael raised his hands, and the chamber filled with music unlike anything ever heard on Earth. The melody seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, carrying emotional depths that brought tears to everyone's eyes while filling their hearts with indescribable joy. This wasn't just sound, it was pure communication of love and possibility. "The cosmic symphony has begun," he announced, and as he spoke, his voice was joined by a chorus that seemed to include every being who had ever lived. Every soul who has ever existed is adding their voice to this eternal song. Death was never the end. It was simply when you joined the greater orchestra. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding as the music washed over her. She could suddenly perceive the connections between all living things, the threads of energy that linked every atom in the universe, the harmonic patterns that governed the movement of galaxies, and the love that served as the fundamental force binding all existence together. Elena discovered that she could now read the symbols covering every surface of the chamber, and what they revealed took her breath away. "These are star maps," she gasped. "But not just of our galaxy. They show the locations of thousands of civilizations, all connected by networks of consciousness and shared creativity." Outside, instead of conflict, something beautiful was happening. The military personnel had abandoned their vehicles and were standing in wonder, looking up at a sky that was now displaying aurora-like lights in impossible colors. Their radios crackled with reports from around the world of similar phenomena. Humanity was awakening to its cosmic heritage. Michael moved toward the portal created by the golden disk, but before leaving, he turned back to the team. "You were the bridge between worlds," he told them. "By opening this chamber, you've opened the door for humanity's next evolutionary step. The music will continue spreading, consciousness will continue expanding, and the barriers between possible and impossible will continue dissolving." Dr. Webb made one final reading that summarized their incredible experience. "The energy patterns are stabilizing at a frequency that promotes peace, creativity, and interconnection," he reported. "Whatever's happening, it's designed to elevate rather than destroy." As Michael stepped through the portal, he paused and looked back one last time. "Remember," he said, his words now seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, "love really is all you need, and music really is the universal language. The symphony has begun, and every human heart is an instrument waiting to play its part." The portal closed, but the chamber remained filled with gentle light and harmonious music that seemed to emanate from the very atoms of existence. The team stood in the presence of transformed reality, knowing that they had witnessed the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure. Above them, the cemetery was now filled not with military personnel, but with people from all walks of life who had felt the call of the cosmic symphony. They stood together in peaceful wonder, listening to music that spoke directly to their souls and watching the sky dance with colors that had no names. The world would never be the same. Michael Jackson had returned not as the king of pop, but as a herald of humanity's cosmic awakening. The music was everywhere now, and everyone could hear it. The eternal song that connected all conscious beings across the universe in a symphony of infinite love and boundless possibility. The greatest show in the cosmos had begun, and every human being was now part of the performance.